Hi, Justin. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Beautiful. And thank you too for being here. Also, Justin, I am quite excited to have you on the show for some reasons. Firstly, when I discovered that another word for knowledge is light, and another word for ignorant is darkness. Ever since then, you know, I've been so keen to seeking knowledge. And that's why I'm just so excited to have you here because I believe that this is an opportunity for me to acquire some information, quality information. Okay, now the second reason why I'm excited to have Justin on the show is for the sake of the audience now, the ones who are going to be listening to our conversation. I believe there are some things that Justin knows that some of my audience needs to hear you say these stuff, directly from your mouth in order for them to experience transformation. I firmly believe that. And lastly, that is me. All right. You know, I am so sure and convinced that I'm definitely going to learn one or two things from your story, your insight, and experiences. So right now, I want you to view me and the audience by the time they will listen to our conversation as a student. So now you are a teacher now because we want to learn from you. So within the next few minutes, Justin, I want us to get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your journey, how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Justin, over to
Yeah, man.
you.
So one thing I'll say, I never thought I'd be a teacher. That's for sure. I was a terrible student. I had a 1.7 GPA in high school. I always jokingly say that if there was a senior superlative for least likely to succeed, it would have been me. So between that 1.7 GPA, my mom was in the middle of a 20-year battle with opioids, and my dad was in jail. And when you look at that, it says you've got no shot, kid, right? As a matter of fact, they say if your parent's an addict, you have a 50% chance of being an addict. And if your parent's in jail, excuse me, you have a 50% chance of being in jail. And so if you do the math, I'm 100% screwed, right? And, lucky for me at the age of 19, I got into direct sales, which taught me a ton about obviously communication and sales and all the things about business, but it also kind of lit a fire under me to be an entrepreneur, right? The time freedom, the ability to make my own money, the ability to create my own life. But most importantly, I had a mentor within that organization that handed me a book, and that book was called Who Moved My Cheese. And if you haven't read it, definitely read it. It's a really quick read, but it spoke to me in that very moment. And essentially what it talked about was, things are going to change around you, and you have no control over those things that are going to change. All you have control over is how you react to that change. And so as a 19-year-old kid who was lost and didn't know what was next for him, that book spoke to me at the core because, look, everything that happened to me happened to me in my life up to that point was not by my choice, right? It was the choice of my parents and so on and so forth. And it really gave me that spark that said, hey, you can literally create whatever you want by reacting in the right way to what you want to create. Thus begun a rather long journey of trying to figure out what is my purpose, what's my passion, what business is going to set me on fire. And I ended up having 3 failed businesses throughout my 20s. On top of that, I did do well in the corporate world at that time. But then at the age of 30, 2 things happened. One, I decided I was going to start a podcast. Or I was 31 at the time. So I was going to start a podcast. And the goal with that podcast was I wanted to interview entrepreneurs and pick their brain and learn from them, similar to what you do, right? To use it as a way for me to learn how to not have the next business that I launch fail. But what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost her battle to opioids. And that opened my eyes to realizing that there's so much more to life than money and cars and things and all these things society told me that I should be chasing. Because as a matter of fact, I was chasing them to try and find happiness, right? When my mom passed away, I realized 2 things. One was my mom didn't die because she was an addict. My mom died because she didn't love herself. And the second piece was I didn't love myself either. And so I did what any 31-year-old would do, and I started to chase accolades and money, and the podcast ended up taking off and got featured by Inc. magazine and started interviewing all these big names and started speaking on stages and started growing businesses and had all these external things that society said if I had them, I would be happy. But I woke up after getting those things and I realized I was the most unhappy I've ever been in my life. And thus began the journey. And we can dive into that if you'd like, but that's where I'll leave you, and you can take the conversation from there.
Amazing, man. So many wrong things that the society has taught us, I tell you. And one of it is happiness. They say all of those materialistic things will make you happy. Then when you have them, you discover that you've been deceived now. And you see, one thing I learned from your story is that part where you said you received a book, Who Moved My Cheese, and you read it. That to me means a lot because not many people are willing to seek knowledge when they're stuck. A lot of people, in my opinion now, they do not want to put in the effort. They're just waiting for this magic to take them out of the situation. So yeah, I tell you. So you now getting to dedicate your time to seeking knowledge. You said the book taught you a lot, and that's amazing. So now, you mentioned that you were trying to seek your purpose. You didn't find happiness in those material things. So that's gonna lead to the very first question. Are you ready? Okay. So can you talk to us about the key to finding fulfillment? Because I think it all banks on
You're
fulfillment
you're
now.
you're
Okay.
breaking up a little bit, so it's hard for me to hear you. The internet
Yeah.
seems to not be
Okay.
great.
Yeah. How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little better right now.
Okay. So I said, can you talk to us about the key to finding fulfillment? The key to finding fulfillment.
Yeah, fulfillment's such a great word, right? Because I think happiness is fleeting, right? Emotions are things that are up and down, and we have this notion that if we're not happy, we're not successful. So I'll speak to that quick, and then I'll talk to fulfillment. I remember I had a relationship coach at one point, and we were talking, and we were going through some things, and she's like, "Well, some of the actions that were happening in my life," she said, "How does that make you feel?" And my response was, "I'm angry. I'm angry right now." And she replied to me, "You're allowed to be angry. You're just not allowed to be an asshole." And I realized in that moment, it was the first time in my whole entire life that anybody gave me permission to be anything but happy. And it really lifted a weight off my shoulder to understand that this idea of this notion of happiness or joy is something you need all the time. That's not true. But fulfillment is something that you can have in your life all the time, which will lend to those dark moments that you're going to experience no matter what you're doing in life. The ups and the downs, it's inevitable. But when you can find fulfillment in your life, that's when you can truly be happy as you navigate all of your emotions. And so for me, fulfillment came a number of years after the launch of the podcast, when I really figured out, how do I navigate life? And I ask a question to every single guest on my show. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? Now, obviously, I interview people like comedians and celebrities and high-end CEOs. So they come from all different walks of life. But I realized there was a common thread in the things they did every single day. And every single day, the 3 things they did was something to serve themselves, whether that was exercise, learn something new, meditate, journal in the morning, whatever the case may be. It was always something to make sure that they were filling their cup first. And I realized that I was looking for fulfillment by helping others versus helping myself. Right. I think sometimes in life, especially when people like you and I, who are a sponge for knowledge, but also we want to help others in our journey, we tend to drain ourselves and we don't think about ourselves through that process. And so I started to implement 4 non-negotiables in my daily life that I could actually begin to fill my cup. And what I now say is, what's in your cup is for you, and whatever flows is for everybody else. And when I started to take care of myself first, I realized a couple things, right? Number one, I realized that I was happier. I was more excited to wake up every single day. The second thing was my relationships were stronger since I was more excited to live my life every single day. The third piece was my businesses grew because people are attracted to people who are fulfilled in what they're doing. And I realized that if I take care of myself, all the other things flow a lot better, right? And so I think fulfillment starts with what fills your cup. Now, a lot of people miss that piece. They don't even know what is actually going to fill their cup. And I always say, like, as we navigate this journey, and we try and find our purpose, and we try to find the things that fill our cup, it's all about trial and error. You got to try new things, and don't be afraid to try new things. But most people are afraid to try new things, right? Because we have these limiting beliefs in our life that say, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, who am I to think that I, right? And so with those limiting beliefs, you have to be able to overcome them in order to step into that process of fulfilling your life and filling your cup first.
Smart on. Well explained, and I got it. You have a point. Can you hear me? Or is it still breaking?
What was that?
I said, am I still breaking? Do you think the network is still poor?
Yeah, you're still freezing and clicking in and out.
Oh man. Okay. I wanted to buttress your point. In order to be able to help others, you need to help yourself first. I got your point. Because someone who say, okay, I'm finding it difficult to love other people. I just can't love other people. That's because that person is here to love his or herself first, or is here to, build that love for his or herself. Because in order to extend something externally, you need to ensure that it is well built internally. So I can't help you if I am yet to help myself. I can't love you if I'm yet to love myself. I got your point. Okay, so we still have two more questions to go, Justin. I just hope the network
Sure.
would permit us. All right, you mentioned limiting beliefs, and Justin, a whole lot of people are suffering from limiting beliefs now because some's got this amazing ideas. They've got this great talent, but you see, they just find it difficult to portray it to the public, all in the name of how would they react to it? What do I really have? I do not have experiences and all of those things. So let's say someone asks you, how can I overcome, limiting beliefs? Like Justin, can you talk to me about how to overcome limiting beliefs? What would your response be?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I actually have a 3-step process that I've developed through a lot of study in order to overcome limiting beliefs. But before we get to that 3-step process, we have to find out, where do these limiting beliefs come from, right? Like, people will go, I'm not able to be loved. I'm not the person who should be speaking on stages. I can't be the person who's physically fit. I can't be this, but they don't know where it comes from. And what I've found through reading a bunch of stuff is that limiting beliefs come from 4 main areas. So I'll go through them as quickly as possible, right? So the first area where limiting beliefs come from is your childhood. And this is probably the most common for most people. And it could literally be as simple as a moment where you're walking through the mall with your mom, when malls were a thing. So when you're walking through the mall with your mom, and she runs into an old friend from college or high school, and they get excited and they get to see each other, and you get a little startled and you hide behind your mom's leg, and your mom goes, "Oh, that's just Justin. He's just shy." Right? So that simple statement could have implanted into your brain that you're a shy person. So you can't be outgoing. You can't speak up. You can't be the person in a conversation that takes control. It could be that simple, right? So that's one, childhood. Number 2 is society. Society says you're a woman, you can't do this. Society says you're a minority, you can't be this. Society says you're gay, you can't go ahead and do that, right? And it's up to us to agree or disagree with that sentiment, right? So for me, society said, hey, you grew up poor, you can't be successful, right? That's what society would try and place on me. That's not where my limiting beliefs came from. So that one was easy for me to overcome. But that's the second place, society. If you believe what society says about you just because of how you were born, that's a problem. The third place is self. So it could be as simple as, go back to your youth again, right? You go and get the courage finally to ask a girl out, and you ask her out on a date, and she goes, "Oh no, I like this other person. I can't date you." And you go look at yourself in the mirror and you go, "Oh, you're ugly." She didn't say that. That's just the story that you decided to tell yourself, right? There's no truth to that whatsoever. She never said it. And so you begin this narrative in your head, right? That internal dialogue that we all have, which tends to be negative a lot of times unless we're conscious of it. But she didn't say that, so you can't own that, right? But we decide that our self tells us this. So that's the third place, is self. Fourth place is your subconscious. So this is like a big T trauma, right? Something that you went through in your life, which a lot of times, unfortunately, is like sexual abuse or something like that, that you actually subconsciously have buried inside of you that you don't remember consciously, but your body remembers the energy that it carries. So this is a big one, right? There's a lot of deep diving. If this is where your limiting beliefs come from, there's usually a therapist involved, somebody who can help you uncover that and really bring that to light. So that's the first piece, is discovering where do these limiting beliefs come from. Then the 3-step process in order to overcome them. I will say this: it is very simple, but it is not easy. It is a tough challenge to create the narratives in your head and rewrite them and all those things. So the first step to overcoming these limiting beliefs is to get uncomfortable. What that means is, hey, if like you say, I want to be a public speaker, but I'm not a great public speaker, the first thing you need to do is commit to public speaking, right? Whether that's joining a Toastmasters group or talking to a small group of people and really committing to it and getting uncomfortable and shaking those nerves. At the end of the day, you and I and everybody else that's listening to this, we are all just energy, right? And so we are literally, science says, we are protons, neutrons, and electrons vibing and energizing, right? This desk that I'm sitting at, that is energy as well. And so we have to disrupt that energy inside of our body, and we do that by getting uncomfortable and committing to something big. The second piece is surrounding yourself with the right people, right? Because getting uncomfortable is insanely uncomfortable. And so if you have the right people with you to guide you through this process, it's a lot harder to quit. It's a lot harder to say, oh, no, I'm not going to do that now, right? When you have the right people behind you, they're going to lift you up and support you through that process. And then the third piece is take action, right? Because nothing works unless you do. And you have to put in the reps and put in the steps and do all the things in order to overcome those limiting beliefs and rewrite the narrative, right? It takes time, though. Like my limiting belief was always, I am not enough. That was my limiting belief that came from childhood. And so for me, that's not to say that thought does not pop up back in the back of my head every once in a while. Now, this is coming from a guy who's had accolades and some of the greatest, articles and lists and all these things, right? I've created some cool businesses. I get to be friends with some really neat people in this world, but that limiting belief still comes back up into my head. But the nice thing is I know the process in order to rewrite them. And it's a lot easier for me when that thought comes up to not allow that thought to control me, and I can overcome them. So that is the 3-step process. I'll quickly go through it again. Get uncomfortable, surround yourself with the right people, and then take action. And if you're able to do that repeatedly, you will then overcome those limiting beliefs over time.
I got that. Thank you for you went down to the root and you helped us with a solution. That's amazing. I love that. So to bring this to an end, Justin, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, maybe you said some things that resonated well with them and they would like to learn more. How can that be possible?
Yeah, sure. So this is what I always end these conversations with when somebody allows me to have a minute and speak. So it's a simple thought and something that people should embrace. You are exactly where you're supposed to be and exactly where you chose to be. Now, a lot of people hear that second part, you're exactly where you chose to be, and they become defensive. I didn't choose this. This is not the life that I chose. It's somebody else's fault that I'm heartbroken. It's somebody else's fault that I'm a failure. It's somebody else's fault that this, and this, right? And I'm somebody who's done that. That's why I can speak to it. It's not my fault that I failed at school because my parents weren't great parents, right? They weren't supportive in that way. They had their own demons. It's not my fault that I couldn't make money because my parents were poor, right? You could have created that narrative, right? But if you embrace the idea that you chose to be here, the beauty of that statement, that means you get to choose where you're going. If you don't accept full responsibility for who you are today, that means you're going to allow somebody else to define who you're going to be tomorrow. So you must accept it. And you must take the action necessary in order to create the life that you want in the future. And that's why embracing where you are as you exactly where you chose to be, it's beautiful because you get to choose where you're going. And so from that standpoint, my man, that is what creates true success. That is what creates true impact. And I hope people understand that if you embrace that, you're going to live a beautiful life. And then where people can find me, if I said something that resonated with them, Instagram is best. At Justin T. Schenck is my handle there. I'm very active in the DM, so they can send me a DM. They can ask questions. They can share anything they want with me. I'm an open book. I get back to people as soon as I can. And I've really enjoyed this conversation, so thank you so much.
Man, same here, man. Thank you so very much. So that's gonna be the end of the show. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing this amazing stuff with us. It means a whole lot, man. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Okay, that was a beautiful one.